Afternoon, shoppers. We're up here at top of Cooma Water Tank on top of the hill. This one's still here. There's one missing. Let's go and have a look and see what happened. Hope. No fluorocarbons. Well, that's a pretty... oh, well, that's okay. I'll just... public area. Just walk in here, eh? Let's see what we see. Looks like a good vantage point from up here to survey broken tank. Courtesy of Snowy Monaro Regional Council water supply. It's where the water went down the hill through all the houses. There's obviously the offending piece of tank. There's the base of it, right next to this one. It's quite interesting that there's a bit of a control structure here. Most of that tank is surrounded by a berm that would push all the water over the back of the hill away from the residential area. This one was designed in a failure to flow into the residential area, whereas it should have been designed to flow over the back hill where there is nobody. And you can see the damage was significant because this concrete debris has flown in the air quite some distance, right up to here. So let's go and take a closer look. So the council have moved in and demolished it. They're using Irwin and Hartshaw out of Canberra. Obviously it wasn't a competitive tender process because it's happened without a tender, all very quickly. And it'd be interesting to sort of work out why it failed, and I can tell you that my immediate appraisal, bit of an engineering brain, is the lack of connecting mechanisms in reinforcing steel here. The wall of the tank, the edge. So the tank was sitting on like a rubber, but no bars penetrating through, and I wonder if it's mastic. So they've injected mastic into the edge of the tank to try and stop it leaking. I'm not seeing any Rio bars. You know, I mean, I can see pretty quickly. There's no Rio bars cut off or protruding from this section here. Now this is the wall width of the tank here, and this is the inside of the tank, and it's had a skirt of cement and rubber on the inside, and that's where the wall sits on top of the slab. Now you would have thought that you would have had pins coming up to stop the wall from moving, and it doesn't, and they've injected this mastic and sealant to try and seal the tank over the original bitumen sealant, and some of these bitumen sealants have got asbestos in them because they've issued an informal asbestos warning to the people who were flooded. They've started digging up their gardens to get rid of the potentially asbestos contaminated material from within the garden. So it's interesting what they've tried to do. It's also quite curious as to why they've so quickly moved to demolish it and get rid of it. So this is the kind of shit that's rubber, depending on when it was laid. It's like a urethane. They've put these urethane sealants in around the edge of the tank, and it's leaked out to try to seal the tank, because this tank leaked like a bastard apparently. Got some reports from some people here who said that they reported the tank leaking in the days before it failed because it was leaking so badly, and obviously running down into the bush and wasting water. Bit of an omen for what was about to happen, but there's not really been any information since. So this is obviously the filling thing. It's got a lid in it, so that's your filling point. And so there you go. Big slab what I'm saying, they could have had the structure engineered, so in a failure, all the water went through the back of the hill and down into the unpopulated area. But let's go and have a look at the tank itself. There were a few comments that there wasn't much Rio in it. Well, I can confirm there is Rio in it, as you can see here. And this is the outside. This here is the outside of the tank, and that's the inside of the tank. And you can see the inside of the tank has had a sealing coat, masticky stuff put on the inside of the tank. And there is Rio, so it's an older Rio. Probably 50s or something, 60s I'm guessing. It's not deformed Rio bar, it's just Rio. It's actually it's got a bit of strength to it. So the tank was built with reinforcing steel, and at some time, either during or after, there were reinforcing bands put around the tank as a strength member. So these are what they call post-tension. So I'm imagining this was installed afterwards to try and put some extra rigidity on the tank. And when we look at the wall sections that we're looking at, that's the inside of the tank. And you can see there's a section of bands coming up there, and there's another section down there. So there was a section quite low, a section about 1/3 up, and then a section sort of up near the top. But not a lot of Rio really for the thickness of it. So one Rio is quite close to the surface there, as you can see, and the other Rio is a bit more under middle. I kind of would have expected a bit more Rio than what I'm seeing, to be honest. So that's the top of the tank here. So there's your Rio and a bit of metal. It's quite close to the surface, which is always dangerous because this is the inside of the tank, and the water can get in and rust it because it's not a galvanized Rio, it's plain. But I mean, it hasn't. But so there's a Rio that's failed, or it's an end, and it's started rusting inside the concrete. It's been exposed now, and if we have a look, it's quite interesting where it's broken. So there's a couple of ties, obviously from one layer to the next, and there's the Rio, so it hasn't rusted. What is odd is all the stones that are missing. These are all stones missing, dissolved. It's like they've dissolved out of the surface of the tank, because they're depressions. I can put my finger in these holes where there should have been stones. So I don't quite understand. This is a mastic layer here, and then this is the bottom of the tank. So it's been bitumened, and obviously put the bitumen on and then poured the concrete, and they've got this stuff here. We don't know what it is. It could be asbestos. Don't know what it is. But it's soaked in bitumen. There's some of your rubber sealing stuff, and there's the various layers of mastic and skirt on the inside of the tank. So there's some of your grout here, which hasn't bonded all that well to the tank, which is probably why it still leaks. And as you can see, it hasn't adhered to the tank. It's not really stuck. So that's then looking up the wall of the tank. And like I said, there's no connecting bars going into there where you would have expected to pin the tank wall down. So it's interesting. Here's a cross section. So this is a join or something. It's just fractured in two straight lines. It's a bit bizarre, but there's some of the rubber seal and the layers, and there's your concrete, and there's your strengthening band. So that's one of the sets of strengthening bands under the render, and there's not really any Rio here. Oh, there's a bit of something missing there, bit of something there. It's almost like it's been, yeah, it's a tongue and groove. That's actually a wall join. See how it's got this section here? That's a join. And there's a little bit of rusting going on there. A little bit of rusting going on there. There's a funny hole. These are these tightening bands or post-tensioning bands. And the thing with these post-tensioning bands is that they're quite rusty. Alright, and they've snapped here. These are all snaps. So this is what's happened for the tank to fail. The post-tensioning bands at the top of the tank were rusty, and you can see that's quite deep rust on this section of tank wall. Up under here, under the render, and the water has attacked it, and I'll get some good shots of these, but they've all snapped. They've not been cut. And there's another set of a couple of post-tensioning bands there that have snapped. So that's how the tank failed, and they knew. The council were told. So I'm sort of curious, work out what happened. You know, I've got friends that live in the area that were and are affected, and they've been told nothing. So these other bands down here, these other bands there, they've all snapped. There's a bit of stretching, you can see here, stretching. I'm trying to focus on it. And then it snapped. So that's what it was. Yeah, you can see they're not being cut, they're all random, they've all snapped. That's what failed. And there's another couple of ones that are missing there. So there's one there, one there. Looks like there might have been a couple of sets around the bottom of the tank. Maybe some were applied after and then the tank was rendered. You can see by the layers there. It's hard to say, but whatever's gone on, it was a failure, mechanical failure, which I believe the council was warned would happen. So there we have it, folks. Andrew's tank consulting. Tank failed because it was rooted, and the council shouldn't have used it. And they can't blame it on anything else, just that the tensioning straps were weakening. And it's made a bloody great mess. I'll take you down through the bush. But I should have a quick look at this. Yep, that's a piece of snapped post-tensioning steel. So there's your tensioning. There's the bars. There's the bars that I was looking for. There's what went in those funny holes. That bit, and the tongue's missing from here. It's been broken off and buggered. This is obviously the bit that connected into that bit, and that's why they've kept it. And it was reinforced. You can see there is reinforcing steel in it. And these are the slots, and you can see the rust. These are where the tensioning cables lived, in these slots in the render. And that bolt, that's a shear, that's not a cut. That bolt's been sheared off. So there you go. Now we know why it happened. Anyway, let's go for a walk down the bush quickly. Just have a look at the damage. Just go back through the opened section that was opened when I walked up here on one of the walking trails. Now the interesting thing is I've spoken to some people who live in the streets here, and they've had one letter from the council, which is, I think, actually quite offensive. So, as I say, Barry Butler said, leave it as you found it. There we go, leave it as I found it. The council wrote a letter. It wasn't addressed to any of the residents. It didn't name them or anything. They have received one letter that kind of said, on a without prejudice basis. So council's already trying to create a legal out for itself. But they were told that there was an incident and that council has an insurance agent. There you go, I'm just stop. There's all the water scoured the bush clean. There's some concrete and shit down there washed away. That's the apron of the tank, the bit on the ground. So anyway, the residents weren't told much. They've had one letter from the general manager. He didn't even sign it. It's a printed signature, so he didn't even have the wherewithal or the dignity, Mr. Bascom, he didn't even have the dignity to personally sign the letters to make it a personal letter as general manager. It's just the householder, I think it starts. Anyway, I'll put a copy of it up later. So, this is what it looks like, just scoured. Shit. All has to be cleaned up. All ratepayers' cost. So anyway, some of the houses have had work crews in their yards digging up all the gardens with diggers and bobcats and tipping it all into open trucks and taking it away, but it's all actually asbestos contaminated material. And the people haven't been asked to leave their houses while it's been cleaned up. The workers are not wearing dust masks or sperm suits, as you would expect in a asbestos situation. They're just wearing their normal clothes and doing their normal thing, driving the digger and tipping all the shit, driving around people's yards and spreading it further. And of course, they've missed massive sections of it. It's all washed up under people's houses and stuck in their fence and stuck in their gardens. And one house has had 3 visits from the work crew. The last work crew was the jail prisoners, supervised by wardens or coppers or someone. I got no qualms with the prisoners, but I'd like the prisoners to not be put at risk of being exposed to asbestos by an uncaring council. And so I'm going to step into the fray. I don't live here, I don't have to care, but I care about the people that do live here. And if my children want to come over with my wife and visit their friends, I want to make sure my children are safe. And on that basis, it's my right and obligation to make sure that everyone's children are safe. Other children who live in these streets, who now live in affected houses. So I'll be talking to the council and trying to find out what they're going to do and are they going to do better, because deliberately exposing contractors and workers to asbestos is a crime, and this council has a form, it has a history of this. Certainly Peter Smith is Director of Environmental Services, and the guy allegedly who gave the okay to fill the tank against engineering advice, because this guy has bloody left school at year 10. It's not like he's an engineer or anything. The old cornflakes box engineer. He gave the okay to fill the tank. And he's the Director of Engineering Services, and he is also the guy that was supposed to clean up, don't know what was there, a muddy mess now, these poor people. But look, this allegedly asbestos contaminated materials are still sitting in people's gardens. Some of it's been cleaned away, but not the bulk of it. It's a bit weird. So I want to know why. Yeah, Peter Smith is supposed to have cleaned the asbestos up with the Polo Flat incidents and what have you, and he did a really bad job and cost the community over $1 million in that regard, and here we are now with millions of dollars of cost to the community. And they've put a little bit of bitumen in there and a little bit of bitumen there, and yeah, it's no even our regional council, you know. It's a bit of a joke actually. So just thought I'd make this little video, a little bit of a chat. I'm going to send it to the councillors along with my complaint. I want to see this all fixed up, and I'll check back in shortly.